Dr. Ash. Welcome, listeners, to today's episode of the Black Business Roundtable. I am your host, Doug Blacksher, broadcasting to you live from the city of Diversity, Oakland, California. Today's show format will be a bit different in light of the events this week. We will have our in-house therapist, our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman, to help us through the trauma reverberating across America due to another mass shooting which occurred in Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. We come to you today with heavy hearts and increasing anger with Congress. I think our local coach, Steve Kerr of the Warriors, the Golden State winning Warriors, I know you like to hear that, Dr. Ashley, said it best today. When are we going to do something? And I use his tonage because that needs to be exemplified in light of 19 kids getting killed by some moron, some idiot, some deranged person. Mr. Kerr displayed a range of emotion as he spoke about the loss of those innocent children. I follow someone on Instagram that is a working adult and family man going through law school, and he delivers his experience with a twist. You can't find him on Instagram, you can find him on Instagram at The Masked Law Student, and his post, May 25th, 2022, made me take a second look. Once again, his hashtag is The Masked Law Student, or on YouTube channel. I saw the words, "I want gun control law passed." That's easy. Included were two photos of sharply dressed black men wearing suits. The additional text above included were two photos and just get very eligible black men to carry weapons legally in their respective jurisdiction and apply the concealed carry permits. The text below the picture reads, "The law will change very quickly. Don't believe me? Look it up in Mulford Act." There was nothing scarier than to seeing black men exercising their right to carry. In 3 months, California changed their gun laws with the help, and I do say the help, of the NRA, and made it super restrictive. I will provide the receipts soon about this act. It is unarguably the only time that the NRA worked with the government entity to restrict gun rights. Once again, his Instagram is hashtag The Masked Law Student. So read the remainder of his post and look forward to the receipts that he mentions. I personally looked up the Mulford Act, and it is in connection with the Black Panther Party and stopping them from their armed patrol in Oakland, California. I bet if people of color, especially black men, started legally arming themselves in large numbers, the law probably will be writing themselves. And let me be clear, the laws probably will start writing themselves. I am sure the members of Congress called out yesterday by Mr. Kerr, and thank you, Mr. Kerr. It takes courage to say what you said and express the anger that you expressed, and a true, genuine effort to feel that this must stop. Mr. Kerr jumped and clawed all over one another to sign that legislation before the ink could dry. Now, today's political corner, which reflects who is and is not locally and nationally honoring their commitment to work for their constituents. Let's start with our broken Congress and those refusing to take action for the very bill Mr. Steve Kerr spoke of yesterday, H.R. 8, the Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2021. Also, Beto O'Rourke confronted Governor Abbott of Texas live on air at the press conference there in Uvalde, Texas. Maybe more politicians need to break ranks and get a backbone and call out other politicians like Beto O'Rourke did. A special thank to our sponsors. Thank you, Mr. Donnie Glover of blackusa.news. And be sure to tune in to Chaplain Friends on Monday, Party Marty, Let's Talk on Tuesday, Black Crypto News with Kamal Hubbard on Friday, as he knows all about cryptocurrency and the blockchain. On Saturday, live from New York City, the Blackout with our sister, Tajmir Gathered. And Sunday, with 60 Minutes in Black USA with Michael Haney. Magnolia Engineering and Construction. Tammy Willis is President, Chief Executive Officer of Magnolia Engineering and Construction, one of a few Black American, female-owned and operated engineering and construction company. Firms in the country and located in Oakland, California. Visit her website at Magnolia Engineering and Construction, because if our daughters can see her, they can be her too. To be considered a guest or to join our advertising family, send your company and or your name, address, website, company phone number, and social media page info to our email address, and that's BBRT2021 for vetting consideration. Now for today's show highlights. Today we will discuss the trauma of yet another shooting, and unfortunately, this is now the second elementary school shooting. Dr. Ashley, you got your work cut out for you today. We can look back to December 14, 2012, to Newton, Connecticut. Oh my God, this is just disheartening, Dr. Ashley. I'm almost in tears thinking about this. We will discuss the latest mass shooting of children with our own in-house professional and weekly show co-host, my ride or die sister, and I spoke about you very highly on the Black Business Expo Olympics, Dr. Ashley, because this show is what it is because of you being here and your input to our audience, to America, and to the world. Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you, Doug.
My co-host, Dr. Ashley Coleman, tenured and immediate past department chair, assistant professor of psychology at University of the West. Follow up with my keynote speech on the Black Business Olympics on May 22nd, 2022. And Dr. Ashley and my backstage producer told me, make it brief. I've been told that I did a pretty good job
Did.
representing.
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This new hashtag for Carlton is hashtag Stand with Carlton
Mm-hmm.
of Raleigh NC. NC is for North Carolina 2022. We will find you up. We will keep you updated on this case. If you have any messages to share with Carlton, please forward it to BBRT2021 at hotmail.com and put in the subject line hashtag stand with Carlton of Raleigh, and once again, stand with Carlton of Raleigh, NC 2021. Our guests today include I got to get to work. You just said hour again, Dr. Ashley. Our weekly check-in with our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman, newly tenured and immediate past department chair, assistant professor of psychology at University of the West. Welcome, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you, Doug. And you did exceptionally well. Thank you so much, teammate. Just want to acknowledge that it's good to see you.
Well, briefly, Dr. Ashley, while I know I have a team which includes you and our backstage person who puts it all together, I had no choice but to go out there and say this is the A team of the BlackUSA.News Black Business Roundtable. So thank you, Dr. Ashley. You were there with me, and so was our backstage person too. Our next friend of the show and always guest and welcome person, Janani Ramachandran, Esquire, will return in June. Friend of the show and running for District 4 City Council in Oakland, California. Visit her new website at Janani4, and that's FOR, Oakland.com, and her new Instagram at Janani4, and that's the numeral 4, Oakland. I'd like to briefly say Janani has done an interview on All About Community host, Mr. Robert L. Harris, who is a friend of the show. And from my talking to Janani, it was an outstanding interview. Folks, All About Community with Mr. Robert L. Harris. Janani was a guest on the show, and from what I understand, she did a knockout of a job. Once again, Janani 4, and that's the numeral 4, Oakland. Now, for the national political highlight in several elections. Well, the results are in. And Georgia, congratulations for all those who have supported my man, my friend, and friend of the Black Business Roundtable, Marcus Flowers, is the Democratic nominee. Hashtag send Congress flowers. I love that one. Next hashtag is perjury Taylor Greene. Once again, perjury Taylor Greene. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock is the Democratic nominee. Go ahead, Georgia. Seems like they're making all the right moves in Georgia, picking nominees who are here to represent and take Georgia out of the Stone Age and bring them into the new age in this progressive time. Stacey Abrams is a Democrat, is the Democratic nominee. Congratulations, Stacey. And Val Deming, a Democrat, is running for the 2022 Florida Senate. Text the word join to 77076. Her Instagram is Val Deming, or her website is valdemings.com. And now, the news of the day, Dr. Ashley, in this Therapeutic Thursday, please take it away. Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you, Doug, and greetings to our listeners. On this day, and that's May 26, 1924, The Immigration Act of 1924 prohibits immigration from Asia. So, on this day, the U.S. government enacted the Eugenics Inspired Immigration Act, which completely prohibited immigration from Asia. Designed to limit all immigration to the U.S., the act was particularly restrictive for Eastern and Southern Europeans and Asians. And upon signing the act into law, President Coolidge remarked, "America must remain American." Congress passed the first highly restrictive immigration law in 1917, requiring immigrants over age 16 to pass literacy tests and excluding immigrants from the Asiatic barred zone. And immigrants from China have been barred since the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And this law expanded that ban to include many other Asian countries. And the Act of 1924 eliminated immigration from Japan, violating the so called Gentleman's Agreement that had previously protected Japanese immigration from legal restrictions. And again, this 1924 Act also tightened the national origins quota system. And under this system, the number of immigrants allowed to come to the U.S. from a particular country was limited to the percentage of immigrants from that country already living in the U.S. And the previous quota was based on population data from the 1910 census, but the 1924 Act based the quota on the 1890 census, which again effectively lowered the quota numbers for non white countries. And this act was supported by federally funded eugenicists who argued that, quote, social inadequates were polluting the American gene pool and draining taxpayer resources. And its quotas remained in place until 1965. As always, I want to acknowledge the Equal Justice Initiative that provides us with these daily reminders of how far we've come, how far we have left to go, and that there's nothing new under the sun.
As always, Dr. Ashley, well said. America, Dr. Ashley keeps us informed on the news of the day, and understanding your past will give you a roadmap to the future. Dr. Ashley, thank you for sharing that with us. And once again, and now, our weekly check in with our very own Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology. Dr. Ashley, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug, and greetings to our listeners, to our reviewers. I know you've gotten to know me over this past year, and so I have dimples, and so my smiles are really genuine, but sometimes my dimples pop out even when I'm not happy. This is one of those times. It is such a heavy emotional time. This week has been particularly difficult. Doug, my smile is genuine when I see you. Uh, but I have to say, I feel guilty smiling today, um, given the fact that just last week we acknowledged the victims that were killed in Buffalo at the grocery store and read their names and acknowledged them. And while they're still being buried, we have another school shooting. And one of the things that in our history of the day noted is that we could close our eyes. And while we were talking about an Immigration Act of 1924, that same rhetoric is evident on the news and has been across the last few years regarding immigration. And the same is with America. It's become violent. And this is the second elementary age school shooting. This is traumatic. And when we experience trauma, one of the things is for those of you who have or haven't been in a fight or just enjoy boxing, it's one thing to take a punch, but when you take a combination, is really when you can get knocked out. And that's where we are. So we're catching our breath. We're trying to catch our breath. We're still in a pandemic. We're still, just this week was the second year anniversary of George Floyd's killing. We're just trying to catch our breath from the from the grocery store shooting, and now this. And so when we experience trauma, there are a lot of emotional reactions that are very normal, very healthy when we talk about the stages of grief or acceptance. So I'm going to read some feelings that you may or may not have been experiencing yet, and they may come up and show themselves in different ways. Again, grief looks differently on each of us. One feeling may be a sense of anger, a sense of despair, a sense of fatigue, agitation, restlessness, hypervigilance. I am not a physician, but my research is in stress and coping. And so I do know that we have the stress hormone cortisol. And so that if we were meeting with our primary care providers, for those that have them, or we're able to be seen by a gastroenterologist, I imagine our cortisol levels would be increasingly heightened because we're responding to life or death situations. And even just by hearing what has happened has increased our cortisol levels. Maybe yelling, maybe crying, maybe mute, not saying anything. And again, this all depends on how each of us individually experience pain, acknowledge pain, the number of trauma or traumatic experiences that we've been exposed to personally, that we've been exposed to collectively. And again, the eerie feeling of that could have been my child. That could have been my grandchild. That could have been me as the teacher. That sense of dread and not feeling protected. And so it's important for us to recognize when we are having these feelings again, um, and to acknowledge them. But what is probably one of the most I would say, challenges about living in a capitalistic country is that our world did not shut down. We were all expected to hear this news, know of this trauma, and continue on. I know I'm not the only one, but I saw on social media parents that were understandably upset, terrified, outraged, and didn't know if they wanted to drop their child off the next day at school. There can be an expectation to just keep going. And while there may be some definitions, or some people define strength as just soldiering on, we understand that if we don't take care of ourselves, we're actually increasing our risk and vulnerability to develop post traumatic stress disorder or another mental condition related to exposure to trauma. And so, what can we do with these feelings? And then again, for those of us, I want to acknowledge the teachers, the parents, the therapists that are working with clients on something else, but just hearing about this trauma is potentially re traumatizing and threatening progress already done and made in therapy. Because we too are people, but are on the front lines. So, what can we do with that? One of the first things, so I'm going to speak to recommendations to take care of ourselves, and then I'm going to speak specifically to parents and how to address this with children, and then also to consider some recommendations on how to get involved even more in your school and your school district and ask questions, holding people accountable about plans. Let me just say this before I go into that. When COVID emerged, companies scurried to quickly adopt policies regarding working from home and how to keep employees accountable. And they did not stop. Companies did not stop with their expectations of productivity, despite the fact that we were standing in lines hoping to get toilet paper, let alone beans and rice for those of us who know how to stretch a meal. And nevertheless, again, it was this expectation of produce, produce, produce. Well, we can, like me and my friends say, and those younger, keep that same energy by applying pressure and holding um, our school districts accountable, our politicians accountable for how to better respond and keep our children safe, despite just increasing their drills as if they're soldiers. So let me go back to taking care of ourselves. As you can hear, there's some anger in my voice. And the way I personally address anger is one, physically and trying to move my body. This would be a great time if I had access to a punching bag. I didn't. But what I did do is I increased the resistance on my bike. I spin and I did. Thank you. Yes, I see you, Doug. Yes, I see you with the stress ball. So I actually went heavy resistance on my workout. So I've been taking it out in good ways on my legs and just kind of giving myself some resistance. But I also, again, another way is through action. And so, what can we do? One is grounding ourselves. Where do you feel safe? Is this in nature? So we're getting ready to have a long weekend. For those of you who I am living vicariously through you and missing Lake Merritt area where I grew up. Being by water for many people is very calming. Same with me. I plan to, at bare minimum, drive past the water, probably get out, feel the sand under my toes. Is it hiking? Is it seeing the trees? Is it reminding yourself that you are also in an environment, and engaging in nature can also give us perspective that there are things and entities bigger than us. For many of us, it's spending time with the people we love, hugging the children, remembering that we can get so lost in striving, being ambitious, striving for our goals, that we may take for granted the opportunity to leave our homes and have our loved ones leave our homes in return. So hugging our children tighter, remembering what is really important and what's really irreplaceable, and it's the people in our lives. So anger into action. That also can mean purpose. So over the past few weeks, as you know, we've had our returning citizens, Sabir and John, and they've talked about how they transformed their minds and the pain that they experienced through incarceration, and then became advocates in the community, and then are reaching back and pulling forward. For some of you, there are many gifts and you have many ideas about how to keep students safer, policy changes that need to be in place. And again, so this can be through letter writing, volunteering, advocating, signing, again, petitions like Coach Steve Kerr did, and just getting active. So that's one of the ways we can transform our anger into ways that are productive. But we have to talk about this. We cannot sweep this under the rug. And so, to our parents or caregivers, we have to have the conversation with the children. Now, I know in previous generations there were things that weren't talked about, or you stay out of grown folks' business and you just stay in a child's place, where our children have access to so much information through technology. But you know who they also are hearing things from? Their peers. And so I have some suggestions about how to start the conversation with your child. Because if they're not getting that information from you, they're getting it from a different source. And it's important, I'm sure, that you want to have influence over not just what your child knows, but starting the dialogue about how your child feels, modeling for them healthy emotional identification and coping, and coming up with a plan. So, again, first it's asking them how they're feeling and not judging them for how they feel. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel confused. It's okay if they don't know how they're feeling and they don't have feeling words. Asking them, do they notice anything in their body? Do they have a tummy ache? Do they have a headache? Um, Asking them, what do they know about the incident? And being patient to allow your child to explain what they know. Now, parents, this is going to take some preparation on your part, because understandably, I'm sure that you had a lot of reactions about the event as well. So you may want to first debrief with other adults and figure out what you decide, what the approach you want to use with your child, what's too much information, what's enough information. So asking them, what do they know about the incident, allowing them to tell the story at their pace. If they've heard things from friends, what if your friend said? If they've gone to school, what if your teacher said? Again, normalizing what they are experiencing. And what's really important, what we're talking about is a debrief. And again, the research shows that when individuals experience trauma, but they receive a formal debriefing, that helps to organize this feeling and organize the mind, and not have a sense of what just happened. But in this mental and cognitive organization, that helps to, again, protect an individual from being susceptible to developing a traumatic stress disorder. If your child does not want to attend school, this is Dr. Coleman speaking, I recommend do not make them go. We're at the end of the school year. Again, to be honest, most schools that are maybe doing commencements or celebrations, I would say would also do good to use the last couple of days, if they do require students to come to school, to have an assembly, to have focus groups, healing circles, debriefing circles, and to reestablish safety in the school. That's what's most important. But for some children, they may not want to go. Now, I understand this involves parents and taking off and time on the books, and I get it. We're rubbing up against access to resources. But if it's possible to ask them, where would you feel safer? Is it going to Nana's house? Is it spending lunch with you or half a day if you can't take the full day? Again, it's understandable that people want closeness to where they feel safe. And so, starting the conversation with your child, planning, and then thinking and coming up with a plan. Is there anyone, and asking, just, this is a great opportunity, just asking questions like, is there anyone at your school that you're afraid of? We understand that this was allegedly perpetrated by an outsider, but bullying happens in schools. And per reports, I think there were two other, thankfully, potential school shootings that were thwarted, one in Texas immediately following what happened this week, and another incident. So sometimes this is a great way for students to also, your child to tell you, well, I'm afraid of this happening at my school. I'm afraid of, this student, or I'm concerned. So again, starting the conversation, debriefing and normalizing emotions, reestablishing safety, having a talk about what to do if your child is feeling unsafe, and reassuring them as much as possible. And then, if after a couple days or a week or so you notice, this can mean also that your child may regress some. Your child may have difficulty going to bed. You may recommend that you kind of reduce their access to the news, reduce what their cell phone is allowing them to see. And I say this because I was just thrown off in hearing, unfortunately, that one of the victims, one of the teachers, that her husband died just 48 hours later, allegedly from a heart attack and potentially from a broken heart. And that news was upsetting. So, again, thinking about our youth and kind of guarding their ears, and then being more patient with them. So, for if you have younger children, they may bedwet, they may have an accident, not getting upset about that. They may have headaches. They may want more hugs. They may be more whiny. Again, also, children respond to the energy that they feel in the home and in the community. And there is a sense of that. And then finally, what I'll say, and Doug, I love your input as well, but this is a time to get active. Um, we have to figure out a solution. And it's not going to be an easy process. There are so many We need vantage points. We need parents to really put their foot down and to advocate. We know that in the Bay Area, we're very proud of our revolutionary history and how much we've advocated for rights. And it's not until people actually feel pressure that something is done. And so, every school right now, at bare minimum, has a COVID plan in place. They want that ADA. They want like like what my favorite teacher says, my mom, they want butts and seats. And so there's a plan that even, and we've been hearing about this, and I know I'm not the only one because parents, you're living it. You'd receive a letter or a text message, or maybe not even be notified appropriately at all that your child's been exposed, and the expectation is that they're back after 5 days. Well, wait a minute. We're talking about another type of safety. And so, if schools can have COVID plans, whether they're effective or not, every school also should have a safety plan in place. And as a parent, you have a right to inquire about what that safety plan is. I just heard, and again, a politician recommend or just kind of say, well, maybe we should only have one way in or one way out. And I'm thinking about Lean on Me, but the movie. But this idea of, what does your child's classroom look like? Where are the exit plans? Do they have any drills? So if they have earthquake drills, because this is not, unfortunately, we're over 200 school shootings in 2022 alone. So when we're looking at shooter drills, those are happening. What are they? How frequently are they happening? Who's involved in that plan? So when we talk about here, one of the things I've learned at my time, BBRT, is CBAs, community benefit agreements, and that you can't come into the community without first meeting with the stakeholders and figuring out what are these business plans and how are they going to impact and positively impact the people here. We're same. Don't send your child to a school where you don't know what their decision making is, because their decision making can influence will influence the well-being of your child. So getting active, holding people accountable, and getting involved, because this is you're sending precious cargo to school. And if you feel uneasy about that, also listen to your gut. But this is a very sad time and an opportunity for all of us to look in the mirror and say, what's our part?
Dr. Ashley, I was so taken by what you just said. Audience, this is a serious time right now. I have a daughter, and she's 27 years old, so I'm not worried about school shooting on her level. But let me be clear here. When she started kindergarten, no, let me go further back. When she started daycare, I took her mother. I told her mother I would be responsible for our child's safety. I had to take my daughter to at least 20 schools, preschool. I would take her into preschool. She was about 2 or 3, somewhere around there. And I would tell the people, I need to have access to come in and check on my child. Mm-hmm. I may drop by with pizza for all the kids and, the little, little
cupcakes and all the stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I had to have access. So before we chose a preschool for her to go to, and we're looking really good on time, so I'm going to be a little long-winded on this for our audience so that they know the steps that they need to take. When I took her to the preschool, Dr. Ashley, she was crying when I left, but I would come back and sit there with her. And the school that we chose, this is how I knew, and I'm going to move quickly from preschool to elementary to high school. Mm-hmm. The person who was taking care of my preschool, 2-year-old, she comforted her until I could ease out of the room, ease out the door. I walked around the school and was looking in the window like that. Mm-hmm. If the preschool didn't know, they probably thought I was a stalker. But I told her I wanted to make sure that my daughter had no problem and had the psychological understanding that even though my dad's gone, I feel comfortable and safe in this environment. So, Dr. Ashley, you're a doctor. So after I finish, you tell me if these were the right protocols and steps, because she's very healthy mentally and physically when it comes to knowing her daddy wears a cape and will be there. So this school allowed me to do this. And I would come there nilly-willy, just drop in and just check to see if her diaper was changed, if she was being treated fairly, if she was eating correctly. This went up until the day she graduated from preschool, and she went to she went to daycare. I did it, and then I did it at preschool, and when she started at an elementary school, I had made it a deal not with the teacher but with the principal, and I was a contractor back then. I said, I will keep the bathrooms running. I will do all your earthquake proofing. And in California, we have earthquake. I volunteered to do whatever was needed so that I had access to my child while she was inside this school. From the time she was in kindergarten till she graduated from 8th grade in this school, I dropped in at will. Cake, cupcake, donuts, pizza, whatever was needed. And then sometimes I would pull around the school and act like I was repairing the window outside of the class that she sat in. I'd be doing like this. And her friends would be going, Irie, that's your dad. But at no time, audience, did my daughter did not know that she was safe. Because her friends said, Irie, your dad is always, and we called her Irie, her name is Letitia. Your dad is always here. He's always looking in. So even if a bandit or one of these psychos came up there, I hope that they knew, man, you don't want to go up to this school, because her dad, and back then I was bench pressing 300, 400 pounds. I'd wear my muscle shirt so that everyone knew my daughter's father was there and was going to make sure that not only she was protected, but if it had been a issue there, I could have been there to, do it. And parents, all of you have to get involved. Now, when she transferred into high school, or graduated, let me say transferred, when she graduated into high school, and I'd like to say she graduated with a 3.9 GPA, because the teacher knew that I was involved, that I wanted to make sure she got her homework, that she got the same academic education as all the kids there. And I held the school accountable. When she graduated and went to high school, I went to the principal and I made the same deal that I made in elementary, preschool, and daycare, that I must have access to my child, and I will be coming up and checking. And the high school bucked me at first. But once again, when I start contributing things, whether it be resources, money, or doing repairs on the school, I had access. And to close this out, parents, guardians, grandparents, you cannot just leave it up to the school, drop your kid off, and think that things are okay. A lot of these criminals out here and stupid people, they are less likely to do stupid things, dangerous things, deadly things, if they see volumes of parents participating, coming in and coming out. Because schools have enough to do to educate and watch out for your child. It's up to us to engage in that school. And we may not be able to stop that as a parent, but let me be clear here. If I came up and seen some crazy man walking into a school with a bulletproof vest and an AR-15, I would have taken my truck and ran him or her over and then backed up. And let me be clear when I say it again, audience. If at any time that I saw my child or the child or children of other parents or anyone in that school, I would have taken my truck and ran that person over and then backed up
Mm-hmm.
and taken my chances with the law. But we need to start letting our kids know that they are protected, they're safe, and they're loved. And we parents have got to start participating in that. Dr. Ashley, please let me know, do I sound crazy or do I sound like a parent who is going to do through any means, hold on, through any means necessary, I'm going to protect my child and the children of other parents who must work and have to work. But we can make a difference too, parents. Thank you.
No, I agree with that, Doug, and very strong comments. And involved parenting is a big piece of the puzzle. And when we talk about, um, unfortunately, what happened in Texas, it's coming out, and parents are starting to speak out about alleged accounts of wanting to intervene and not being able to intervene the way they wanted to. And so these stories are starting to sound very troubling. One account talked about a group of parents that actually wanted to intervene and were allegedly stopped by law enforcement. And so I think a lot is going to come out from this. I think what you're picking up on too, Doug, is what it is about trauma and about perpetrators of trauma. They don't care. And I think that's what can be so helpless and scary is you can teach your child, for instance, no secrets. You can tell your child no one should be able to touch you here or touch you there. You can teach your child all of these things, and yet what that can do is your child can access support when someone tries to do it, but teaching your child doesn't stop perpetrators from crossing these boundaries. And that's where we're talking about the psychological or evil that is terrifying, because everything in trauma, and this is where trauma survivors have a hard time not blaming themselves, because they are the dedicated parents. So those in the people of the 19 children, those were dedicated parents, those were involved parents, those were parents checking in. The teacher, I read the letter that one of the teachers sent at the start of the school year, introducing herself to parents. And the scary thing is that we can do everything right and be in the wrong place at the wrong time, be at the grocery store, be at school. Those teachers, and I have no doubts of the accounts of them putting themselves on the line to protect their students and dying with dignity and honor that they just, and dying heroes. Yet someone kept shooting. And so, what's scary about trauma is we can always, and we want to believe as humans we have control. That's what's soothing. And as a parent, how much more do you want to feel like you have control over this life that you've brought into the world? However, what's scary about the world is boundaries don't mean that people are going to respect them. And that's where we're all feeling. We want to say, what did we miss? What did we do? Is it about the guns? Is it about the access to guns? And even there's going to be so much noise in the system and valid conversations. And yet, and still, it's the mindset of the person who picks up the gun.
Dr. Ashley, well said, and I totally agree. But let me be clear, audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you are right, Dr. Ashley. We can't be everywhere. I mean, it could happen in the store
Mm-hmm.
as a white person, when a white racist person went into a store and shot up all those senior citizens. It can happen anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But let me be clear here, audience. That school
Mm-hmm.
initially, and I would go to the high school and the elementary school, they kind of gave me a little bit of a challenge, but I didn't back down.
Mm-hmm.
And if more parents would engage into school interaction and school events and the education of, and I know a lot of parents have to work, and I totally understand that, and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I left corporate America, well, in addition to having some racial issue, but at one point I didn't make the money I was making working for corporate America, but I knew I was going to do everything, and I say I knew that I was going to do everything that I could to make sure my daughter was safe, and to make sure that the school understood that I had, and parents, we all have a responsibility. Sometimes you can't do overtime, and I know you need to. Everything is costing so much. Gas is $6 a gallon. And in Oakland, they're shutting down schools, causing extreme hardship on Black and brown students, parents, because they can't go to the school in the neighborhood now. They got to be bussed out to other schools, or they got to be driven out. And gas is $6 a gallon. Shame on you, Oakland, California, for closing these schools down and selling those schools to a private sector, causing additional hardship on people of color specifically. But do everything you can. Everything you can. So I get it, but I get it. Thank you, Dr. Ashley. Well, I think we're looking very good on time. So, audience, I want to say I have two issues I need to talk to you about, and I'll be brief. Coming from me, that's funny. I'll be brief. That's like asking. That's like asking the kid, does he like chocolate? Does he don't eat the chocolate cake? I used to attend a church called Shiloh Church in Oakland, California. Pastors Derek and Heather Shepherd. I recently saw on Facebook that Pastor Derek and Heather had a nephew traveling with his family in Italy. And somebody took the child, took the kid. I wanted to put it out there because, audience, this show is not just locally, and not in the county, not in the state, but we go from the Pacific to the other side of the country, to the Atlantic. From the Pacific to the Atlantic. We go from border to border, Canada to Mexico and beyond. And we are in several other countries. I humbly ask that you all look into this child who has been taken from his parents while on vacation in Italy. And I'll have more information on the next Black Business Roundtable. We had a pandemic which caused traveling to cease. Now we have traveling back on, but we have issues where people are coming up missing in other countries. Italy, I hope you're listening. Next week, I will have the name of this child. You find this child. In America, if they don't, then we need to stop traveling to countries that continuously don't ensure the safety of American citizens while traveling in other countries. And that's Pastor Derek and Pastor Heather Shepherd, who are pastors in the church in Contra Costa County. I promised I would get that message out. Second, I ran late today, and that's why I've been kind of, I wasn't really comfortable when I sat down, and I didn't get a chance to read over my literature prior to getting started. But we had a meeting with the City of Oakland Contract Compliance. I'm not going to name any names, but I'm going to be brutally honest here. Oakland, for the past 3 or 4 decades, has excluded Black businesses, Black contractors out of the contracting process. And I will cite Mason Tillman's diversity disparity study that shows over $500 million in Oakland government contracts. Black businesses only receive 0.32%, which equals $1.4 million of contracts going to Black businesses, while 86 cents of every dollar goes to white, male-owned businesses. Getting back to what I was originally saying, we met, and there was many groups: Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce, NAACP, CRC had some of their people there. The minority diversity, and I'm sorry I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but I will have that information for you next week. But there were several organizations, nonprofit, who were challenging and asking Oakland, why do we keep meeting to have inclusiveness of Black businesses in this $500 million process? We need to stop meeting and start greeting Black businesses back into the process. Back in the 1990s, my dad and I, and that will be part of what I'll be reading today, we started a business where we did abatement service, and there was much more inclusion of Black businesses in the processes, the bidding processes, and inclusion of Black businesses in the contracting opportunities here in the city of Oakland. And city of Oakland, if you're listening, let me be clear here today, because I'm going to wrap this up, Dr. Ashley. I want to get my speech out. Quit pissing on my leg and tell me it's raining. You know the problems. Blacks are not getting contracts in this city. From the mayor of Oakland to city council and people who are hired by the mayor of Oakland, I've heard this: it's easier to ask for apology versus, and I may be saying it incorrectly, Dr. Ashley, it's easy to ask for, it's easy, you do, just do what you got to do and ask for permission later. Now, do you know the phrase that I'm looking at referring to, Dr. Ashley?
No.
Ask for oh, here it is. It's easy to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. And that's what the city of Oakland has done for over 3 decades. Well, let me be clear, Oakland. I'm not asking for forgiveness. And that's what you have done with the people who you hire. The directors in the city of Oakland have run this city as if it was a private business. I cited today in the meeting that the city of Oakland continues, fails to follow the guidelines of the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of the federal government. Now, Proposition 209 says, oh, we can't show any more favoritism or exemption. And it's not favoritism. It's called inclusion. But Title IX, some of these politicians have hung their hat on to exclude Black businesses from the processes of getting contract in this city. It's going to stop. There's some people in nonprofit organizations who are helping the political people who are denying opportunity, contractual opportunity. Presidents, business leaders, religious leaders, I don't care who you are. The buck stops here today. And moving forward, Dr. Ashley, I'm going to start naming names and taking my chances. Because for 3 decades, doing nothing, how's that working for us? Blacks are losing their homes, their marriages, because they can't afford to live. They can't take care of their wives. They're taking the manhood and womanhood away from businesses here in Oakland. 70% of homelessness in the city of Oakland are Black people. And over 50% of those Black people are elderly. It's time to take the gloves off and start punching, because that's the only way we're going to get something done here. Talking, how's that working for you, Oakland? How is that working for you, the business people in Oakland? I have civil rights organizations all across this country. I have civil rights lawyers, top lawyers all across this country, just waiting for me to give them a call and help them jump in and address the exclusion of Black businesses in the $500 million plus $500 million contract that are coming out of this city that are not benefiting Black businesses. And actually, to me, it seems an effort to destroy Black businesses here in the city of Oakland. On that note, Dr. Ashley, are you ready? Because, girl, I'm going to tell you something. Since Sunday, my phone has been ringing off the hook. People were truly inspired by my speech. And thank you, coming from you. And I know you're my therapist and my friend. If I didn't do an okay job, you would have told me. But audience, I want to share this keynote speech that I gave at the Black Business Olympics Expo this past Sunday. Are you ready, Dr. Ashley?
I'm ready. Oh, before you go, Doug, we just want to acknowledge quickly our sponsor, and just want to acknowledge Mr. Donnie Glover of BlackUSA.News. And again, there's a host of programming that Doug mentioned earlier: Chapin Friends, Party Marty Let's Talk on Tuesdays, Black USA Crypto News with Kamal Hubbard on Fridays, The Blackout Live from New York with Tashmir. And Sundays, we have 60 Minutes in Black USA with Michael Haney, as well as a list of shows that are being added regularly. And acknowledging as well Magnolia Engineering and Construction. And Magnolia is unique, offering engineering and construction services and a comprehensive administrative and compliance component. Doug, I'm going to segue to you.
Dr. Ashley, get ready. Because after all, I've had hundreds of phone calls telling me they want me to come back on different shows and give another speech regarding the one that I'm going to read to our audience today. And audience, it's because of you who have inspired me. It's because of Donnie Glover, Dr. Ashley, our backstage person who keeps this show running tight and right. And we'll call her Ms. Mag. Here we go. Keynote speaker Doug Blacksher, speaking on political power equals economic inclusion. Good afternoon, attendees of the Black Business Olympics, the vision of Dr. Eric Kelly III. Furthermore, I would like to thank Mr. Donnie Glover of the BlackUSA.News, who gave me a platform that evolved into the Black Business Roundtable podcast, broadcasting live from the city of Oakland, California, every Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The show has evolved to include, as I call her, my ride or die, my co-host, Dr. Ashley Coleman, Doctor of Psychology, tenured and immediate past department chair, assistant professor of psychology at University of the West. I am an advocate for small businesses such as Magnolia Engineering and Construction, a Black minority woman-owned construction and engineering firm which procures government and private contracts. My intro to politics, politicians, and political system, getting my feet wet. My initial exposure to the importance of participation in community politics was due to my mother, Jean Blacksher, of Oakland, California, while living in the Tola Heights community. I also saw other family members that belonged to unions, the Teamsters, USS Posco Steel, General Motors, Pacific Bell, now known as AT&T, and the Teachers Union. My biggest supporter, cheerleader, and role model until his passing was artist Blacksher, my father. Excuse me. Next introduction came from my mother's brother, a civil rights and corporate attorney, Robert L. Harris of Oakland, California. He encouraged me to get involved, working with and to develop economic empowerment for people of color to become a NAACP with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. As of 2020, I became a NAACP life member. Show of hands, how many of you residing in the United States and listening to this podcast are members of the NAACP? Fact, there are approximately 30 million Black voters in the United States and approximately 2 million NAACP members in 2022. We could increase membership substantially today if a new $30 membership of those on this website today, webcast today. Their website is www.naacp.org. 1980 to 1989, I worked at United Parcel Service, UPS, as I started out as a sorter and eventually rose through the ranks to driver, delivery, and management. Issues of discrimination became prominent in the organization, and eventually I was asked to speak up and speak out, and I did with an interview with SF Gate News article, Google Doug Blacksher and drivers hit back at UPS. 1990 to 1996, I went back to school at San Francisco State University and received my teaching credentials under President Clinton's Welfare to Work program. I trained dozens of drivers. I trained dozens of welfare recipients, predominantly African American women, in trucking, shipping and receiving, and to become self-sufficient. In 1994 to 2000, started A Green and Shrubbery Service, a family-run business which brought me into contact with Oakland's bidding process for the abatement contract of property within the city. I could see firsthand the signs of gentrification affecting Oakland, how politicians were selling out Oakland. Political power and economic exclusion was driving first-time homeowners out of San Francisco's expensive housing market into Oakland's home ownership, displacing locals due to political power and exclusion. 2000 to 2022, I was hired by the largest food distributor in the United States. My job description included training over 150 drivers to decrease their incidence of accidents and injury and increase their customer service. I was successful in my endeavors, but when I refused to discharge an African American driver without just cause, I experienced corporate political power and economic exclusion. In other words, they fired me. 2002 to 2015, I started AMG, which was a general contractor and construction company. In 2010, I had the opportunity to work on the Highland Hospital project, which is the County of Alameda Hospital. We support politicians that support using political power for economic inclusion, listening to the concerns and needs of their constituents, and not bowing down to corporate interest and or greed. Politicians we have supported locally on the Black Business Roundtable podcast is for the people. Take a moment and do your homework and see whom or what entity is financing your politicians. Check to see if they don't accept corporate money and raise funds the grassroots way. Janani Ramachandran, Esquire, social justice attorney and running for District 4 City Council in Oakland, California. She is a member of the Asian American and Pacific Islander 94, and that's FOR, Oakland.com. Rebecca Kaplan, the vice mayor of Oakland, is now running for Alameda County Supervisor. Her website is supervisorkaplan.org. Pamela Price is running for Alameda County Alameda County District Attorney. Her website is Pamela Price 4DA. Politicians we have supported nationally on the Black Business Roundtable podcast. Why? They are people of color, qualified and often grassroots donor supported and committed to making changes that are going to uplift, not tear down their constituents. Marcus Flowers of Georgia is running against a supporter, a conspiracy theorist, and past guest speaker at a white nationalist rally, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has a fitting nickname, #Perjury Taylor Greene. You heard that right. Perjury Taylor Greene. Need I say more? Marcus Flowers 4, and that's FOR, Georgia.com. Reverend Raphael Warnock of Georgia, running to retain his seat and keep Georgia blue, another essential Democrat seat. His website, Warnock4, and that's FOR, Georgia.com. Stacey Abrams of Georgia, running to oust Governor Kemp of Georgia, the man who was running previously against Stacey Abrams, and at the same time, he was the fox watching the hen house. And over the very election he was running. Would that have been allowed had this been a person of color? Visit Stacey Abrams' website at stacyabrams.com. Val Demings of Florida, running against Marco Rubio and closely aligned with the Republican agenda. We see how things are going under Governor DeSantis. Visit valdeming.com is her website. And I have to say this, Marco Rubio, pack your little, as Trump said, pack your little bags, put your little Kid March tennis shoes on, and scurry on up out of there. Let Val Demings get down there and clean up that mess you have going down in Florida. I also started a segment called The Political Corner, which informs my audience who is and is not locally and nationally honoring their commitment to work for their constituents. We need to call out politicians that use their positions against the very constituents they are to serve. They are there to serve. You can start today by attending your local community meetings, which are often and available via Zoom, so you can attend from the comfort of your own surroundings. Take a moment and do your homework and see whom or what entity is financing your politicians. Check to see if they don't accept corporate money and raise funds the grassroots way. COVID protocol has made community participation easier. So you can see and hear for yourself the decisions being made for your community. It is your opportunity to get to know your representative and speak to issues of concern. Civil rights leader and Congressman Mr. John Lewis advocated and lived by example and commented, we should get into good trouble. This is your opportunity to start. Let me share with you today examples of political power that equal economic inclusion or exclusion. SB 1367. Once again, SB 1367. The Integrity in No Bid Contracts Act, which failed to pass Senate Governmental Organizational Committee. Would that be inclusion or would that be exclusion? SB 1360, which would stop abuses in the California Disclose Act and finally make online ads stop hiding who pays for them. Would that be inclusion or would that be exclusion? 2017 Race and Gender Disparity Study conducted by the City of Oakland, California. Would that be inclusion or exclusion? I would like to encourage you I would like to engage you in a quick exercise that will take all of 3 minutes. I will read a few current examples of issues happening right now and just jot down inclusion or exclusion. And at the end, I will let you know how many pertain to both. First, housing appraisal of homeowners of color coming in lower than Caucasian homeowners of like property. Would that be inclusion or would that be exclusion? African American Sports and Entertainment Group, AASEG. Their website is aasegoakland.com, trying to bring a Black-owned professional football team to Oakland, California, and revitalization with community support, yet political power won't support AASEG. Why? Would that be inclusion or exclusion? Number 3, destroying the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, ILWU Local 10. Their website is www.ilwu.org. Local 10, serving the Port of Oakland at Howard Terminal, which is 74% African American membership, to allow a public land grab of prime real estate of one wealthy billionaire, costing jobs and community stability. Would that be inclusion or would that be exclusion? And last but definitely not least, the closing of public schools. Their website is www.slapbayarea.org. and that is SLAPBAYAREA.org. In underserved, economically disadvantaged communities, often of color, and allowing the sale of those schools, allowing the sale of those public resources for pennies on the dollar, which are then converted into corporate charter schools owned by the same wealthy billionaire who's trying to destroy the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, ILWU, with 74% African American membership. Would that be inclusion or would that be exclusion? All these examples are of political power equal economic exclusion. And I want to repeat that. All of these examples are of political power equal economic exclusion. Understanding this is the key to removing political barriers to acquiring generational wealth, community economic revitalization, good paying union jobs, quality education, and the encouragement of childhood ties to their community. So you see, politicians holding political power play an important role in the day-to-day of our stability to thrive. Organizations that I belong to that might be similar in your community. The Alameda County Democratic Central Committee support Democratic candidates and legislation first week Wednesday of each month and has approximately 60 members. Oakland Community Policing Advisory Board work with community to work with police to better serve our community. They meet first Wednesdays of every month. Oakland East Bay Democratic Club supports candidates and legislation to bring to Alameda County Democratic Central Committee, as we are separate, but under this organization. I am chair of labor and economics, and I fight for our business who are being kicked out of economics here in Oakland, California. The foundation of my participation in the above organization stems from working with my civil rights attorney, Pamela Price, now running for Alameda County District Attorney's Office in California. Pamela Price Esquire fought for my civil rights. Google Doug Blacksher and Pamela Price, and one of the few African American women to argue a case before the Supreme Court and win. Black contractors, in particular, should be aware of project labor agreement, also known as community work agreement, as Elisa Victory, running for mayor in Oakland, California, pointed out last week when we had her on the show, are tools being used in some major cities to ensure that Black African Americans are excluded from the city's contracting practices. Let me be clear, audience. Project labor agreements that we allow, that politicians allow to be written up to exclude Black and African American business is designed because we don't get involved. We don't know the language that's written in the agreement. And let me tell you something. The language in these agreements are atrocious in ousting Black and brown businesses, specifically African American and Black businesses, out of the contracting practices, not only here in Oakland, California, but all across this nation. Black people are on the bottom of everything in regards to housing, economics, upward mobility, generational wealth accumulation. How can Caucasians having a 200 plus year head start and expect us to be at the same point on this continuum? Our Caucasian counterparts get jobs despite background checks that include felonies, grand theft, drug trafficking, and other heinous crimes. Corporate political power offers inclusion to the Caucasian company, but won't mentor the black business contractor to reach the same economic opportunity and growth. And that's going on here in Oakland, California at great lengths. Where the heart is of any candidate and their level of sincerity. Where the heart is of any candidate and their sincerity. I encourage you to be proactive and become part of the political power and economic inclusion by first joining the NAACP. We have more political power and can force inclusion if we have the numbers to do so. And what that means, we have to stand together. Our political people, candidate, politician, they're breaking us up in little fingers. And yes, they have sellouts. Yes, there are some people in the Black and African American community who are head of these organizations, whether it be political, religious, or other, who are selling us out. Encourage unionization and unions as they protect workers and provide political power. However, some unions over the past 20 or 30 years are excluding Black membership. Research candidates running for your local, state, and national election. And if they have Zoom open meeting and town hall, sign up and attend. Go out and meet your neighbors, have block parties, and get to know one another and start bringing our villages back to life across America and beyond. It takes a village to raise a family and watch out for one another by pooling political power and demanding, yes, demanding economic inclusion. Hashtag stand up for Carlton of Raleigh, NC 2022. And the NC stands for North Carolina. Stop School Bullying, Crane County TX 2022. And that is TX stands for Texas. Hashtag Driving While Black with Michael Thrash Taylor, County TX. And TX, once again, is Texas. If there is anything that you can get from what I'm saying here, audience, we have to stand together. And together we'll make a difference. Now, that concludes my keynote speech. And I was not able to get a few minutes of the last part of my speech out because, as you know here, audience, I will sidebar in a minute. But the gist of my keynote speech on the Black Business Expo Olympics to not only Americans, not only California, not only Alameda County resident and the city of Oakland, but globally here, because my understanding, we had Australia, Japan, Africa, and many other countries participating in the Black Business Expo Olympics. We need to come together as a team, as a family. Forget our petty differences. We have one common goal, audience, and that is economic inclusion. And we don't have that now. The city of Oakland, California, the politicians, starting from the top, the mayor of Oakland, some city council, and the mayor hires directors of these departments who says it's easy to ask for forgiveness than permission, are excluding Black and African American businesses out of the contracting of over $500 million of contracts coming out of the city of Oakland every year. And personally, I am tired of being tired of it. I am sick and tired of driving by homeless camps that have 70% of African Americans who've lost their jobs, who are kicked out of the union, who don't have access to becoming union members. That's why I support SLAP. Schools and labor against privatization, SLAP. I urge you to join that. In addition, we need to hold our nonprofit organizations who say they're representing us. And I'm not naming any names now, but let me be clear, audience. In order for me to clean up other cities, counties, and states that I've been asked to do once I fix Oakland, and I'm going to fix it, or I'm going to name every nonprofit, starting from the board, executive boards, to the presidents, starting from our religious leaders, starting from our politicians. I will call your name out and make sure that the constituents in your cities, in your counties, in your states, and nationally know. And I will give them the websites and the fact check that they need to find who is and who is not representing Black businesses in Oakland, California, in Alameda County, in the state of California, and nationally here. And once again, Proposition 209, that was designed to exclude Black people out of the political, or out of the contract procurement process in the city of Oakland. And yes, the Mason-Tillman study clearly pointed out that out of $500 million in contracts given out in the city of Oakland, California, 0.32, not even 1%, 0.32% of those dollars go out to Black and Black woman-owned businesses. And it's gotten worse in the last 8 years. Yes, it's gotten worse in the last 8 years. All Oakland talk about is let's meet, let's put a committee together, let's get all these organizations together, and we're going to fix this. Well, we've been fixing this for almost 20 to 30 years now. And instead of going up, getting better, we're steady going down. We're like a plane heading out of control, and eventually we're going to crash. And once that crash happens, gentrification in Oakland will be successful. Black people in Oakland, we could just have a museum here because we're not going to be able to afford homes. We're not going to be living here. The unions, the most strongest union and dollar paying in the nation, the ILWU Local 10, starting from $100,000 to $400,000. If we allow these politicians, they're going to sell the Howard Terminal to one billionaire. And our mayor went to Washington, D.C. to see Kamala Harris, who is the vice president of the United States, who used to live in Oakland and the Bay Area. Our mayor, Libby Schaaf, went to Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, to get hundreds of millions of dollars for this billionaire. But she will not say African American Sports and Entertainment Group. She will not support them. And if she is, I have not seen any evidence of that. To own the first Black-owned NFL team in the nation, in the world, audience. Why is that? Is that inclusion or is that exclusion? And in the meeting today, I had people talking about they stood on the steps of City Hall to flag this disparity study around. White people won't hire us. There's a disparity to study. I didn't see the mayor out there in support of you. And that happened back in February. What's happened since then? Is that inclusion or is that exclusion? Audience, I can go on and on and on. As you can see, the passion that I have here this afternoon, this evening, is clear why I was asked to be a keynote speaker on the last day of the Black Business Expo Olympics. And let me tell you something. We had some powerful, powerful business leaders, thinkers. And when we met and talked, oh my God, Black people in America are getting tired. And in summation, we're getting tired of these organizations, whether nonprofit or not, getting paid while Black people get played. Whether you're on executive board, whether you're the president of these organizations, that's right. You're getting paid while Black people and Black businesses get played. Religious leaders, the same thing. They're getting paid, not all of them. Now, let me be clear, not all of them, but those of you who are, I will be naming names and pointing fingers and doing a fact check. So you don't have to take my word for it. You can look at their records. As we conclude, and we're going to conclude early today, is Dr. Ashley, I think, did she take off? Is she backstage? As we conclude today, I want you all to know that I am not going away. I am going to fight for our people. And if you are not representing, whether you be a politician, whether you be a president of a nonprofit organization or a profit organization, whether you sit on the executive boards of these organizations, whether you be a religious leader or other, Doug Blacksher of the Black Business Roundtable will be naming names and giving facts of what is and is not going on, not only in the city of Oakland, in the county of Alameda, in the state of California, and all across the United States of America. I want to thank Mr. Donnie Glover, who has given me the opportunity to have this platform. Donnie, it's because of you I am a phoenix that has risen out of my own challenges with racism in business and politics in America. And you have given me the platform to not only help, but educate our people on blackusa.news. Thank you, Donnie Glover. Audience, I'm going to wrap up today, and I want to say emphatically, tears come to my eyes as I think about the meeting we had today. All we did was talk as we have done for the last 20 years. And I don't know what's going to come out of the meeting we had today with the city of Oakland. But until we come together as one, put our petty differences to the side and realize, Black America, we have one common goal here. And that's economic power. That's political power. As we wrap this show up today, and once again, we're going to go off early because I am truly disheartened at this dog and pony show that has been going on here in Oakland for the last 20 to 30 years. And the politicians, yes, the politicians who have purposely put together a plan to destroy the economic vitality in the Black community. Let's stick together, let's stand together, and as we conclude this show, audience, I humbly ask that you listen, that you hear, what is and is not going on in this city, that you listen, that you hear, and do not believe what they keep telling you, because it does not take 20 to 30 years to bring inclusion for Black people in economics and getting more than $1.4 million of contracts out of a city that puts out $500+ million, $500 million, and you give Black businesses, it's not even crumbs. Black people, we have to lick the pan to even say that there was a pie in the pan. Let's stop begging and start fighting for economic inclusion. As we end the show today, I hope you listen. I hope you learn. And I hope you share. Because I know you care. This is Doug Blacksher. And my co-host, I might have to give her a call after this. My co-host, Dr. Ashley Coleman of the Black Business Roundtable. God bless. Thank you for attending. And good night. We'll see you next week.